The greatest football nations are usually built around one unforgettable generation. Brazil had Pelé. Argentina had Diego Maradona and Lionel Messi. Germany had eras of champions built through decades of tradition. But France created something different. France kept producing new generations of elite players. In 1998, a French team lifted the World Cup on home soil. At the center of that victory was a young midfielder named Zinedine Zidane. Years later, another French generation reached the biggest stages of world football. Thierry Henry became one of the most feared attackers of his era. The next generation produced another global superstar. Kylian Mbappé announced himself to the world as a teenager. 3 different eras, 3 different generations, 1 country. But the real mystery was not the players themselves. The real mystery was how France kept finding them. Somewhere across the country, thousands of young players began chasing the same dream. On small neighborhood pitches, children learned their first touches. On local training grounds, coaches searched for signs of extraordinary talent. Most of those players would never reach the biggest stadiums. But some would become the next faces of world football. France did not simply wait for football miracles. France began building a system to create them. And at the center of this transformation was a place that would change French football forever. Before France became a football powerhouse, success was never guaranteed. French football had talent. French football had passionate supporters. French football had players capable of brilliance. But something was missing. The country could discover great players, but it struggled to create them consistently. For decades, French football searched for answers. The national team experienced moments of greatness, but those moments often disappeared too quickly. In the 1960s and 1970s, France watched other nations dominate the world stage. Brazil dazzled with creativity. Germany built a culture of organization. Italy mastered defensive intelligence. France was still searching for its own identity. Young players appeared across the country. Many played on small local fields far from professional stadiums. Some possessed incredible natural ability. But talent alone was not enough. Without the right environment, potential could disappear. Without the right coaching, raw ability could remain unfinished. Without a national vision, discoveries remained isolated. French football faced a difficult question. How could a country stop depending on luck? How could France build a system that found talent before the rest of the world? The answer would not come from signing bigger stars. It would not come from copying another nation. It would begin with a radical idea. Instead of searching for football success, France would start building it from the ground up. In the late 20th century, French football began asking a different question. The problem was no longer whether talent existed. The problem was how to protect it. Across France, young players were everywhere. Children played football in neighborhoods, schools, and local clubs, but their paths were often uncertain. A talented child could be discovered too late. A promising player could receive poor guidance. A future star could disappear before reaching professional football. French officials realized that finding talent was only the beginning. The next challenge was developing it. They studied successful football nations around the world. They examined how young players were trained. They looked at how coaches shaped decisions, technique, and mentality. The goal was not to create players like machines. The goal was to create better environments for human potential. France began investing in a new generation of coaches. New methods focused on technical ability. Young players were encouraged to understand the game. They were taught to think, not only to compete. A new philosophy started spreading through French football. Talent was no longer something to discover by chance. Talent was something that could be guided. And France needed a place where this idea could become reality. that place would become one of the most famous football academies in the world. In the quiet countryside outside Paris, a new experiment began. Far away from the noise of professional stadiums, a football laboratory was being created. The French Football Federation built a national training center focused on developing young players. It was called Clairefontaine. The idea was simple. Find the best young talents from across France. Bring them together in one environment. Teach them the foundations of elite football. At Clairefontaine, football was not only played, football was studied. Young players trained their first touch. They learned how to make decisions under pressure. They studied movement away from the ball. They developed the mental habits required at the highest level. But Clairefontaine was never designed to create identical players. A creative midfielder was not trained like a powerful striker. A defender was not developed like an attacking talent. The goal was to improve each player's unique qualities. Behind every training session was one belief: great players are not only discovered, they are developed. The academy became a meeting point for France's most promising young footballers. Different backgrounds arrived through the same gates. Different dreams entered the same training fields. And slowly, France began building something the football world had never seen before. Clairefontaine could not create football stars by itself. Before players entered the academy, someone had to find them. Across France, thousands of young players competed every weekend. On small local pitches, scouts searched for something special. They were not only looking for goals, they were looking for intelligence. They watched how players moved without the ball. They studied how players reacted under pressure. They searched for qualities that statistics could never fully explain. A perfect pass, a creative decision, a fearless personality. French football created a network designed to discover talent early. Young players from different regions received opportunities to be noticed. Talent was no longer limited to the biggest clubs. A child from a small town could be seen by national scouts. A player from a difficult neighborhood could receive a chance. The search for talent expanded beyond traditional football centers. France began looking everywhere, because the next great player could come from anywhere. The country did not know the names of future champions yet, but the system was already searching for them. Every generation brought new faces. Every new face carried a new possibility. And this was the moment when French football started becoming a machine. Across France, football was being played far beyond traditional stadiums. Children grew up with a ball in neighborhoods across the country. Many discovered football on small concrete courts. Others learned the game on public fields after school. For many young players, football became a language everyone understood. Different cultures gathered around the same game. Different stories shared the same dream. French football began discovering talent from places that had often been overlooked. The suburbs surrounding major cities became important sources of young players. These neighborhoods produced footballers with unique experiences. Players learned creativity from unpredictable environments. They developed resilience through daily competition. They carried their communities with them onto the pitch. French clubs and scouts searched beyond traditional football families. They looked for ability wherever it existed. The result was a national team shaped by many different backgrounds. Players with different origins wore the same blue shirt. Different journeys became one collective identity. But diversity alone could not create champions. Talent still needed structure. Dreams still needed discipline. Raw ability still needed the right environment. And this was where the French system became different. It did not only search for talent, it built a pathway for talent to survive. Behind every great player, there is someone who helps shape the journey. In France, that person was often a coach. French football understood that talent needed guidance. A gifted child could have incredible ability, but without the right coach, potential could remain unfinished. France invested heavily in educating its football teachers. Coaches learned how to develop young players step by step. They studied technique. They studied tactics. They studied how young minds learn the game. Training was no longer only about winning matches. Training became about building complete footballers. Young players were encouraged to make decisions. They were taught to understand space. They learned when to attack. They learned when to control the game. The best coaches did not simply give instructions. They helped players discover solutions. This philosophy shaped generations of French footballers. Players became technically prepared. Players became tactically intelligent. Players became mentally ready for pressure. The system was not searching for one perfect type of footballer. It was developing players who could adapt to the modern game. And slowly, France began creating something bigger than individual talent. For years, France had been building quietly. The world was watching the biggest football nations. Few people were looking at the changes happening inside French football. Then, in 1998, everything changed. The World Cup arrived in France. Millions of supporters filled the streets with hope. A new generation stepped onto the biggest stage in football. The French squad carried players from different backgrounds. They represented a new image of French football. At the center of the team was Zinedine Zidane. The midfielder controlled matches with calmness and creativity. Around him, a talented generation reached its peak. France defeated opponents one by one. The team reached the World Cup final. Inside the Stade de France, history was waiting. 2 goals from Zidane changed French football forever. The final whistle created a moment of national celebration. France lifted the World Cup trophy for the first time. But the victory represented more than a single tournament. It showed the power of a new football philosophy. A philosophy built years before the final match. A philosophy focused on finding and developing talent. The world finally noticed what France had been building. The football miracle was no longer a dream. It had become reality. After the celebration ended, French football faced a new challenge. Could one World Cup victory become a lasting legacy? Or was 1998 only a moment that would never return? The answer began appearing on football fields across France. A new generation of players started emerging. Young footballers entered the same development pathway. Coaches continued searching for the next wave of talent. Clubs continued investing in youth development. The system kept producing new possibilities. Thierry Henry became one of the greatest attackers of his generation. He combined speed, intelligence, and technical ability. Other French talents followed different paths. Some became defenders. Some became midfield creators. Some became attackers who changed modern football. The names changed, but the process remained. Young players were discovered. They were developed. They were prepared for the highest level. This was the difference between a golden generation and a football system. A golden generation appears once. A system creates opportunities again and again. France was no longer searching for another miracle. France had built the conditions for the next one. 2 decades after France lifted the World Cup, a new generation arrived. The faces had changed. The dream remained the same. Across France, young players continued chasing football's biggest stages. Among them was a teenager from the Paris region. His name was Kylian Mbappé. From a young age, his speed separated him from others. But talent alone was never the entire story. He developed inside the French football pathway. He learned the demands of elite competition. He transformed potential into performance. In 2018, Mbappé returned to the World Cup stage. This time, he represented a new generation of French talent. The team carried players from different backgrounds. They carried different personal stories, but they shared the same football identity. France reached the World Cup final once again. A young squad stood one match away from history. The final whistle confirmed another French triumph. France became World Cup champions for the second time. 20 years separated the two victories. Different players lifted the trophy. Different coaches led the teams. But the foundation remained connected. France had proven that its success was not a coincidence. For years, the world looked at Clairefontaine and searched for France's secret. But the answer was never hidden inside one training center. The real revolution was much bigger. France had built a network designed to find talent everywhere. Across the country, thousands of young players began their football journeys in local clubs. Small community fields became the first stages of future careers. Local coaches became the first people to recognize potential. Regional programs then searched for players who could reach a higher level. The best talents entered specialized development centers. Clairefontaine became one of the most important symbols of this pathway, but it was only one part of a much larger structure. Professional academies completed the next stage of development. Clubs across France created their own environments for young players to grow. AS Monaco became famous for developing extraordinary attacking talents. Olympique Lyonnais built one of Europe's most respected youth systems. Stade Rennais continued discovering elite players from the next generation. Paris Saint-Germain developed talents from one of football's richest regions. Each academy followed its own philosophy. Each club created its own pathway, but they shared the same belief. Talent could exist anywhere. A future world champion could begin on any local pitch. The mission was not to wait for a football genius to appear. The mission was to create an environment where genius could be discovered. That was the true power behind French football. The greatest test of any football system is not one successful generation. The greatest test is whether it can create the next one. After the triumph of 2018, France did not stop searching. A new wave of young players began emerging across the country. Different players, different academies, different journeys, but the same football culture. At AS Monaco, Kylian Mbappé had already shown the world what French development could create. Years later, another generation continued that tradition. Aurélien Tchouameni emerged as a complete modern midfielder. At Rennes, Eduardo Camavinga became one of Europe's youngest midfield sensations. Désiré Doué followed the same pathway of a club trusted with developing young talent. At Lyon, Bradley Barcola developed through one of France's most respected academies. Michael Olise represented another example of France's expanding talent pool. Born into a different football journey, he eventually became part of the national team's future. In Paris, a new generation continued growing inside one of football's most competitive environments. Warren Zaïre-Emery became a symbol of that new era. These players did not come from one single academy. They came from a connected football nation. A nation where clubs compete to develop talent, where coaches search before the world begins watching, where every generation creates the possibility of the next. The names continue changing, but the machine continues moving. For decades, football searched for the secret behind France's success. The world saw the trophies. The world saw the superstars. But the greatest achievement happened long before the celebrations. It happened on forgotten training fields across the country. It happened inside local clubs. It happened through coaches who believed in potential. It happened through academies that developed players patiently. Clairefontaine became the symbol of this revolution. But the real genius was never one building. It was an idea. An idea that talent could be discovered anywhere. An idea that young players needed more than natural ability. They needed guidance. They needed opportunity. They needed a system designed to help them grow. That is why France continues producing generations of elite footballers. Not because every player follows the same path, but because the country created many paths toward greatness. From Zidane's generation to Mbappé's generation, and the players who will come after them, the story continues. Because the next football legend is not created by chance. It is created when a nation builds the conditions for greatness to appear.